Kia ora koutou, I'm Kate.
And I'm Elise, and we're with Anglican Advocacy.
You might have heard that right now there's a new law going through Parliament called the Zero Carbon Bill. So what is it?
Yeah, and how can you have your say on it?
Let us tell you. So the problem is, at the moment, New Zealand doesn't have any comprehensive plan to address climate change.
Yeah, that's right. We have no plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
So gases like carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide or methane that warm the atmosphere when we pollute them.
Yeah, and actually Kiwis are big polluters of greenhouse gas. In 2016 we were the 6th highest per capita in the developed world, so we're polluting way more than our fair share.
Scientists around the world agree that every single country needs to reduce their emissions of greenhouse gas, and they need to do so really urgently. If we don't, the consequences are going to be really severe. Some parts of the world will be much warmer, storms will be more severe, droughts will be longer, so affecting food production. Some species will become extinct and some homes are going to be lost to sea level rise.
And these changes will affect everyone. But climate change will actually affect the global poor the most, as they're the ones that can't escape from these effects.
Yeah, and that's just fundamentally not fair, is it? So countries with smaller economies, people who haven't contributed so much to climate change, are going to be shouldering, a lot of its impacts. For that reason, acting on climate change is a matter of justice. And for us as Christians, acting on climate change is really essential to loving our global neighbours properly. So what should we do? What's the solution to all of this? Scientists say that to avoid the worst of these effects, we can't let the global average temperature increase by more than 1.5 degrees from pre-industrial times. And that means that globally, collectively, there's only so much greenhouse gas that we can put up into the atmosphere. So it's like we've got a greenhouse gas budget for the entire world. And if collectively we blow that budget, the temperature will rise more than 1.5 degrees and the consequences will be severe. And for New Zealand, a really sobering fact is that our share of that budget, currently the way we're polluting, we're tracking to blowing our budget in New Zealand by 2030. So we need to change things fast. But there's some good news here.
Yeah, there's great news, actually. In 2015, almost all of the world's countries signed the Paris Agreement, where each country made commitments to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and enough to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. And New Zealand signed up to this as well, but as we've mentioned, we have no plan for how we're going to do it.
And that is where the Zero Carbon Bill comes in. So this is a new law, which as currently proposed would do three things. So first it would introduce targets for different types of greenhouse gases, the long-lived ones, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and the short-lived ones with methane. So the law would require the government to set those targets and then make plans and follow the plans to actually meet and come through on the targets.
And the law will also set up a climate commission, which will advise the government and help them to make the right decisions to meet those targets.
Thirdly, the law will require government to make plans to adapt to the changes that we're already seeing from climate change in New Zealand. The real question is this new law going to be strong enough? Will it really ensure that New Zealand limits our emissions enough to do our fair share internationally to play our part in keeping warming below 1.5 degrees?
So the government is calling on the public to have their say, and it's really, really important that people do so. This law is one of the most important ones in our lifetime, so let's submit.
Yeah, there's a few things to think about when we make our submission, and the first is, are the targets ambitious enough? So we've talked about the need to keep warming within 1.5 degrees and for New Zealand to play our part in that. And there's some things to note about the law as it's drafted. So it explicitly states the goal of keeping things within 1.5 degrees, and that's really great. The target for long-lived gases, that's carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide, is to get to net zero by 2050. And that's a pretty good target, but it could even be more ambitious. So the top dogs internationally on climate change, the International Panel on Climate Change through the UN, say that actually to keep within 1.5 degrees, we need to get halfway towards that goal of net zero by 2030, so much quicker than 2050. So while we also need to get there by 2050, we need to have an interim target halfway along so that we're actually tracking really quickly towards that goal. On methane as well, so to let you know what the methane target is, it's a reduction of 10% by 2030. That's what's currently written into the bill. And this is something that groups have different opinions on. So groups like Federated Farmers say, actually that's too ambitious and it's unrealistic for a country like New Zealand that's so dependent on agriculture for our food, but also for our economy, to reduce methane by that much. Other groups, such as Greenpeace, say that that's not ambitious enough and we need to be doing more to reduce methane. So that's something to just be mindful of as well when you're making your submission and considering, is this ambitious enough?
Another thing to consider is asking, will the law actually hold the government to account? We think the bill could be better at holding decision makers to account.
So what will happen, Elisa, if the government doesn't meet their target?
Well, where the bill is at now, the only legal consequence is for the courts to make a declaration that the target hasn't been met.
That sounds pretty weak.
Yeah, you could consider asking for the courts to have more power.
So that they actually can hold the government to account if they don't do what they say.
Yeah, that's right.
Another thing to think about when making your submission is, why is this actually important to you? So do you have a personal, something personal to share, for instance, about your faith or your family, your children or your grandchildren, or your personal experience, where you find yourself in New Zealand, that you can use to say why you care about this and why you want to see strong action on climate change.
So that's how you have your say.
Yeah, there'll shortly be a link on the screen that'll show you where you can do so online, or you can post a handwritten submission to the address, which will show on the screen shortly. The important thing is, make sure you have your say. This is a very important bill that will affect New Zealand for decades to come. Don't miss out. Submissions close 16th of July.
Have your say. Today.